Okay, so we're continuing our study of what is Chassidus, the deepest part of the Torah, the deepest, what's considered the deepest, most well-kept secrets of the Torah, right? Chassidus. What is it? Why do we want to learn it? And what sort of impact does it have in the way that we learn, that we study, and the way that we, perceive our lives and, experience our daily life? So a very, very quick recap of our last class, and maybe a little bit before that. We said that Chassidus is the essence of the Torah, right? The essence of godliness, of God in the Torah. And we spoke about how the Torah has how the Torah has five levels of learning, right? Different layers. We spoke about the simple layer, just very, very simple understanding of a story. Abraham went and did whatever it is, simple idea, or of a law or of anything, just a simple understanding. Then we spoke about an allusion, like it alludes to something else. Anything in the Torah could be alluding to something else, something further in the future or deeper or whatever it is. Then we spoke about the level of the homiletical or the, I forget the other word I'm looking for, expounded meaning, okay, which is called drush, which is when you take something of the Torah and you expound it to mean something else, apply the concepts to something else. And finally, and then there's the soid, which is the mystery, the mystical part of the Torah, which is the Kabbalah, right? Not everybody is able to learn that. It's very complicated, very spiritual, and very difficult to understand. And then the fifth level is Chassidus, which we are, it's really the focus of our learning. What we are learning now is Chassidus, and that is what connects to the deepest part of the soul, right? Each one of these five levels connects to a different level in the soul. Our souls also have five levels. And the main point that we need to remember is that Chassidus, which is the deepest part of the Torah, okay, the godly spark, the godly essence of the Torah, right? God, as he is found in his Torah, that is Chassidus in its purest form, okay? And that connects to the purest part of our soul, right? The Yechida, it's called the Yechida, the part of our soul that is one with God, right? It's the purest expression of God in the Jewish soul, okay? And these two relate. Okay, the expression of the pure essence of God in the Torah and the essence of God in the person, right, is all is all connected. Okay, so the last class, so this was going a little bit back. The last class was about we decided we were going to take a specific example, right? Moideani, the prayer that we say when we wake up in the morning, thank you, God, for giving me back my soul. And we explained it in all in our basic four levels, right? We explained it according to, and just, I'll make it quick. We explained Moideani according to the simple understanding, meaning to say, we are thanking God for giving us back our soul, right? We don't say God's name because we're impure when we wake up in the morning. We haven't washed our mouth. We haven't washed our hands. So therefore, we don't say God's name. But we're thanking God for giving us back our soul. Then we explained according to the level of remez, which is the allusion, alluding. We're saying that when we wake up in the morning, in the words of the Moideani, it alludes to the revival of the dead that is going to happen when Mashiach is going to come. Then drush, we explained, that just like God gives us back our soul, even though we owe him everything, and we owe him all our good deeds and all the things that we still have to do, he doesn't matter. He still gives us back our soul. So we learn from Moideani the same way. When you give a loan to somebody else, and they give you a security deposit, you have to give it back if they require it for their livelihood. And kind of like when they need it and take it back. Okay, it's a mitzvah that we do, and we can see that in Moideani. Finally, we learned the mystical part of it, which is the Kabbalah aspect, and that is that our soul comes from a level that's called the level of foundation, as it connects with the level of Malchus, which is the level of kingship. And then I don't want to. I feel like I'm going over with a recap, but I guess it doesn't hurt, right? Then we went on and we added the element of Chassidus. How does Chassidus come into the mix? And without really adding anything new, we're not changing the facts. How Chassidus goes into the level of the simple understanding, pshat, remez, drush. So each one of these levels, right? The simple understanding, the illusions, the expounded, and the mystical, it adds its own reframing. And by doing so, it adds life and it makes it much more applicable, right? And much more powerful, really, in our daily life, right? And that's what we started doing with the first two. So with the first one, with the simple understanding, we explained the concept of Chassidus is that, when we're thanking God for giving us back our soul, we're not just what are we thanking him for? Not just because we wake up and we walk in the morning, but rather because we have a Jewish soul that is connected to God, and we have the ability to connect to godliness, right? And that is really what we're thanking God for in the morning. Okay, that was what we, in a nutshell, what we added to the simple understanding. According to what Chassidus added to the allusion, the remez level of the Torah, which again spoke of, how waking up in the morning alludes to the revival of the dead when Mashiach is going to come. We explained that according to Chassidus, that the idea here is that we're not just waking up. It's not just an illusion because it looks like we're dead when we're sleeping. Sorry, let me just mute that. Okay, should be muted now, hopefully. Okay, so it's not just because we are waking up when we're sleeping, but rather because God is constantly creating the world anew every second, and that's something that's recognizable when we wake up. So in reality, the truth of the matter is that God in that moment actually did revive us, did recreate us, our body and our soul. Okay, that was a very long recap. I apologize. We're going to move on today to the last two levels. Okay, the last two layers of the Torah, as they connect with Chassidus, as Chassidus comes in to elucidate upon them. Okay, so as we said, we're starting today with the level of drush. Drush, as we said, is that Moidani is just like a person, just like God gives us back our soul because of even though we owe him, we also, in a case in which somebody gives us a security deposit for a loan, we also have to give back the security deposit. Okay. Now, Chassidus starts asking a question. This rule that we just explained, right? This idea that, you loan somebody money and they give you a security deposit and you don't just get to keep it the entire time, right? If that person needs it, right, for their livelihood, or they need it, to live, right? It's part of their daily routine and they actually need it. You actually have to give it back to them when they need it, right? And the question is obvious. What's the point of a security deposit if you can just give it back? Seemingly, the whole idea of security deposit is you owe me money, I have a security deposit, and I get to keep it. It's similar to if you stole something from me, right? And I get to, take it back. I get to it only makes sense. So how come, right? The Torah tells us no, right? You have a security deposit, and even though it seemingly doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to have to give it back, right? You still have to do it. So Chassidus adds a reframing, a new dimension to this idea, which will help us put things into a different perspective. And that is like this. The fundamental principle, the fundamental principle of what a mitzvah is God's will. Okay? God's will is one with God. Is God himself, right? You can't really separate God's will from himself. It's who he is, right? You can't separate it. Within a person, there's different aspects of a person, right? There's a body, there's a soul, there's mind, there's emotions. With God, it's all one thing. God is indivisible. Okay, so his will is part of who he is, right? And therefore, just like he transcends any reason, God is not here for anything else, right? God doesn't need a reason to exist. God is because God is. God is the primal cause of anything else. In fact, things are because God is. Okay, let me say that again to make sure that God doesn't need there's no cause, there's no reason for God. Okay, if anything, God is the reason for other things, right? God is the primal source and the primal cause of everything. So there is no reason for him. And whatever applies to him applies also to his will. As we said, his will, his desire is part of him and therefore is one with him. It can't be divided. You can't divide God into parts, right? So just like God does not require a reason, just like God does not require a cause. In fact, it's impossible to have a cause for God. So too his will, okay? His desire for something, which is part of him, does not involve any reason and does not involve any cause. It just is, because it is God. It just is. So now we see that when it comes down to mitzvahs, right, to commit to the commandments that God gives us, God's will, right, we have different types of mitzvahs. Some of them we don't understand, right? There's a mitzvah like, if a person is impure, you take a red heifer, a red cow, and you burn it, you do all these sorts of things. It makes no sense, zero sense. Even King Solomon couldn't understand this mitzvah. But then you have other mitzvahs that seemingly do make sense, right? Like don't steal. Okay, you can't have a society people are stealing from each other. Like don't kill. Okay, it's a logical thing. Okay, so we have different types of mitzvahs. Some of them make sense and some of them don't. Okay, these are different types. They're called mishpatim, chukim, different types of mitzvahs. We're not going to get into that so much. But what Chassidus is teaching us here, though, is that in reality, whether you understand the mitzvah or you don't understand the mitzvah, at its core, the mitzvah does not require a reason. Which means to say that even a mitzvah that you do understand, right? That you understand, okay, I'm not supposed to steal because you can't have a society. You don't have to believe in God to have that mitzvah. You don't have to be Jewish. None of that is relevant. It's just a logical thing. Nevertheless, because it is a mitzvah, we do it even if it doesn't make sense. Even if in a situation, right, where to your mind, it doesn't make sense to not steal. Okay, I mean, not stealing is a very basic one, but there's other things that potentially you say, it just doesn't make sense to me. It is irrelevant. You do it because it's God's will, and God's will does not require a reason, does not require a cause. Now, it happens to be that God gave us a reason, right? But the reason is just a way for us to relate to it. Okay, at its core, what a mitzvah is just God's will. It's just one with God. Okay, and therefore, okay, when you think of this mitzvah that we were talking about now, the idea of returning a security deposit, okay, when you give back that security deposit, you need to realize there's two parts to this mitzvah. There's the part that I can relate to, okay, which is, well, I gave somebody a loan, and this person needs he needs this, whatever it is, blanket to sleep at night, or he needs this shovel so that he can actually go work and earn a livelihood. Whatever it is, the security deposit wasn't necessarily money. We're talking about an object. I think maybe I didn't clarify that. We're talking mainly about an object, right? The guy gave me his shovel, right? He gave me his pillow and blanket or whatever it is as a security deposit, and he needs the shovel to go work and earn a livelihood, right? There's one part of the mitzvah, which is I need to give it back to him because I need to care about the other person. How is he going to go and pay me back? Or how is he going to go and survive if I don't give him back the shovel, right? But then there's the other part of the mitzvah. And the other part of the mitzvah is that we're not doing it only because, in this case, for example, okay, it'll be a nice thing to do for somebody else, or it would be the right thing to do for somebody else. There is a dimension to this mitzvah, which is valuable in and of itself, that this is what God wants. God wants you to return it to this person, whether it made sense or it doesn't make sense. In this case, it kind of does make some sense, partially. Part of it doesn't make sense. But the idea is that the fact that you are returning something to their owner, returning this security deposit, is something that God finds pleasure in. Therefore, it's something that has meaning in and of itself because it's God's will, and that is what it is. It could be completely beyond understanding, and it's still meaningful because you're connecting with God. Okay. Now, obviously, that doesn't negate the fact that when you do a mitzvah and there is a certain part that involves understanding, you should also relate to that. You should understand. You should try to connect with it as much as you can as a human, right? Because it's definitely going to help us do it with more passion, and there's a reason why God allowed us to understand some of the mitzvahs, right? But the most important thing to remember is that at its core, that's not what a mitzvah is. At its core is not because of this. We don't steal not because society wouldn't be able to exist with people stealing. We don't steal because God said don't steal, and that is what He wants, and therefore there's no further reason required. Okay, and that's really important thing to remember. Okay, there's a story, okay, with the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Lubavitch, and he said something very interesting. He said, we are very lucky. We should be very grateful that God gave us commandments that are beautiful and make sense. And some of them, and that we can relate to. Because if God had told us, sit and chop wood the entire day, for your entire life, that would have been what we had to do. And that would have been, our way to connect with God's will. That would have been, the most meaningful thing you could have possibly do is something that is completely meaningless to our eyes. So we should be thankful that actually a lot of these mitzvahs, or most of these mitzvahs, are things that we can relate to and see the beauty in them. Okay, but we always need to remember, as we said, that at its core, a mitzvah is nothing but godliness, God's will. Okay, and in order to fully appreciate this, okay, as we said, we need the perspective of Chassidus, the perspective of Yechida, right? Because every single level of the Torah, as we said, has a specific form, a specific shape, right? And therefore, it recognizes the value of, certain types of reasonings. But when we're talking from the perspective of God, of the essence of God, of Chassidus, the perspective of the essence of the soul, okay, only from that perspective you can boil it down to the essence and realize that a mitzvah needs no more value than just the fact that it's God's will. That it needs no more value, no more reason, that just the fact that God wants it to be. Okay, and that perspective only comes from the essence of godliness, which is in the Torah, and the essence of godliness, which is in the person, the soul. Okay, let's move on to the last level of the Torah, which is the Kabbalah part of the Torah. Okay, as you remember, the Kabbalah explanation is that from the words of the prayer of Moed Ani, we say the words Melech Chai V'Kayam, the king which is eternal. Okay, and we explained, Kabbalah explains that this is alluding to two spiritual levels. Okay, one of them called Yesod, and one of them called Malchut, okay? Foundation and kingship. Now, we don't have to get into what each level is. It's really not, we don't need to understand them fully to understand the point that we're gonna make, but that level is from where the soul is returned to us from, okay? When our soul goes up to heaven, right? While we sleep, it goes up, most of it goes up, right? It comes back down because, and from that level of connection between the level of foundation of Yesod and Malchut. Now, what Chassidus adds is the following, and this is, as with most things in Kabbalah, the things that we're able to relate to and actually understand on a normal level come from Chassidus. And Chassidus says the following, and I find this very, very interesting, okay? And that is that these two levels that we're referring to, the level of Yesod or foundation and the level of Malchut or kingship, they represent two very, very different aspects of a creation. The level of Yesod, okay, represents the higher levels of godliness, of spirituality, and those levels are characterized by the fact that they're like godliness in the sense of they're not bound by time, they're not bound by space. Okay, they're removed from physicality and everything physicality represents. Okay, time and space. The level below that, which is the level of kingship of Malchut, okay, that level represents the way God gets involved with creating a world. Okay, it's a level of godliness in which God actually recognizes, okay, the limitations of physicality. It's the level through which God actively creates time, space, physical matter, everything that we see around us is a direct consequence of this level of Malchut, of God coming down to this world and creating a limited world. So the first level is how God transcends the world. How he's done, the world don't even take up any. It's like what's the word I'm looking for? Let me see. It's okay. I don't forget the word I'm looking for. It's a level in which the worlds are of no consequence. They take up no space. They take up no they're nothing compared to that level. That's a level of Yesod. And then the level of Malchut is the level in which God says, I'm actively invested in creating a world. The world does have a role. The world is recognized in a way. So what the Torah is telling us, right? What Chassidus is telling us, in the fact that our neshama comes from the level in which these two connect, the connection of Yesod and Malchut, right, is the fact, right, that the fact that in order for the soul to come back to this world and be recreated, the soul and the body, as we said already before, right, that every second God recreates the whole world, including our souls and our bodies. The fact that the world is being recreated every second from nothing to something, right, comes from the essence of God. The essence of God, okay, and this is something very deep, so try to stay with me. The essence of God is something that is, when we think of God, we usually think of infinite. But the essence of God cannot be defined as infinite, like Yesod, transcendent, infinite, right? The essence of God is something that is beyond being infinite or finite. Meaning to say, okay, and I hope I'm not going too deep here. Let me know if you don't understand, but meaning to say that just like something finite, something constrained, right, is limited, something that's specifically infinite and transcendent is also limited. Think about that for a second. Okay, something can be infinite, right? But that means it's by definition not finite. It's not inside anything that's finite. So if something is finite, it's not infinite. And if something is infinite, it's not finite. So even something that is infinite is sort of limited to its own infinity. Okay, you follow me? So when we talk about God, the essence of God, we cannot say that it's infinite or transcendent, and we definitely cannot say that is finite and limited, for sure not. So the essence of God is actually something that is above both, is above infinity, and it's above finitude. And because of that, in order to create something out of nothing, you need to transcend both the something and the nothing. You need to transcend both of those levels. Both nothing and something need to be equal to you. And that is only by the essence of God. And in order to create something out of nothing, it has to come from that essence. So when Kabbalah tells us that this idea of restoring, recreating the world every second, right, that we are acknowledging when we wake up, comes from the connection of Malchut, the finite, or the level that deals with the finite, and Yesod, which is the level that is completely transcendent and infinite. And the way these two connect, it's telling us that our soul is being restored. The creation of the world, this creation ex nihilo, something from nothing, is coming from the essence of God, which transcends both, which brings both of these two levels together. Okay, that was, I think that's pretty deep stuff. So, if you didn't fully grasp it, definitely feel free to reach out afterwards, and I'll gladly explain it again or help you out. And that is the 4 levels that we wanted to discuss. Finally, I think it's important that we can go through and realize how the Chassidus is a thread that goes through all the 4 levels at the same time. These 4 things that we said are connected, okay? Starting by the fact that, God creates, we started with the remez aspect, which highlighted the fact that God creates the world every single second. Every single second we're being created anew by God. That our existence is nothing but God creating it over and over and over again. Were he to stop creating us for 1 split second, we would never have existed. Okay? That realization leads to, is then supported by what we said with regards to the level of the mystical, the Kabbalistic. That has to come from the essence of God, that in order to create ex nihilo, something from nothing, every single second, that has to be done it has to come straight from God's essence. Okay? Now, when once we develop that realization, okay, we realize how nothing in the world is really of substance other than God, and other than God. And that realization leads us to what we learned in the Pshat, the simple understanding of Modéani, right? That is that we're not just thankful because we wake up and we walk and we can eat food and we can have all sort of fun activities. That's not what we're thankful for, because we've developed already the realization that there's nothing of value other than God. Nothing really has any substance. It's all in a way a mirage other than just God. And when it's not a mirage, it's only because God wants it not to be a mirage. So when we develop that appreciation, then we could say, well, why am I thanking God for? Not just because I'm walking around and eating, right? But because I have the ability to connect with him, which is the only thing that really matters, right? And that's the level of Pshat that we saw. And then finally, right, once a person realizes that, he's led to then want to serve God and want to actually connect with him in the best way possible, which is what we learned in the level of drush, right? Which is that, in order to connect with God, you connect with his will, you do his mitzvahs, but you do them just because, mainly, right, at its core. Again, I'm not putting away the fact that you want to understand, and you should try to understand as much as you can, but you realize that the main value of a mitzvah is the fact that you are then becoming one with God's will. That when you do that mitzvah and you fulfill God's will, you're one with that will, which is one with God. So therefore, you're one with that creator. And you see now the thread that kind of went through all these 4 levels that Chassidus created, and allows you to then appreciate all of them, and not only all of them separately, but actually all of them together. So I think with that, we're probably going to be concluding this specific topic. And I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next week. I'll try to figure it out. If you guys, I think Elia gave you guys my phone number, so feel free to reach out if you have any suggestions as well. I'll take suggestions, or if you have any questions. But anyway, that's it for today, and thank you guys for listening and for coming.
Hey, Rabbi, real quick, can you make sure they post your classes online on YouTube so that we can go back and freshen up?
For sure. I send the videos to Elia, to Rabbi Selfin. I send them to Rabbi Selfin every time. I think he is posting them. I definitely reach out to him. He has all the videos.
I think I saw it one class. I tried to get to.
Yeah.
I don't think I was able to get the second part.
Okay, so I would say reach out to him, and he should be able to direct you, because he's the one that's uploading them. And if for some reason there's any issue, you can let me know. I can send them to you. I have them saved. Okay.
Okay. And by the way, I feel left out. I didn't get your phone number.
I don't know. Rabbi Sylvan he told me he shared with some people that had questions. I'm not sure if he made it public. And
okay.
You guys have, but definitely reach out. He'll give it to you. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.